Okay, folks, welcome back. And on at an unusual time, I should be at work, but I'm not because we have another surprise. We left the strong tone open. Hopefully, none of that evaporated too much. Yeah, I got back from an event we had last night that was late. I was out of town, and got back a little later than I would have liked. But anyhow, so we're gonna do what's up, Ben? We're gonna do a recap of what I learned yesterday, and we're gonna dive right back into the palm trees and finish up these three sets that we have here. The the long one, the round one, and the original one. So made out of cork. And might as well do another one too. It's going to take a little bit of time for the goop to dry, so we've got some time to work on this stuff. So that's what we're going to do. So, welcome, Barnes. So, without further ado, I'm going to flip this and we can look at the other side, what we've got. And I don't think this is going to be in the way. I hope it's not in the way. Let's flip this all the way around. And the video is not reversed. This is actually what it looks like, not the mirror image of it. Okay, so what you have in front of you is this Ammo Solutions late war vehicle. So this distributor, it's a store and it's also a distributor in Tampa called Spray Gunner. I've talked about them many times in the past. They put on this seminar hosted by none other than Mig Jimenez. Mig Jimenez himself, who does all the ammo paints and the Atom paints now and all that stuff. And he's actually was going to be there. And it basically cost the price of this. You had to buy one of these, and then he did this seminar where he was going to show everybody how to do the stuff. So everybody had one of these, and the setup area that he had was really nice. And the facilities there at Spray Gunner are incredible. They're very organized. Everybody had an airbrush to use, which was battery powered. Which I really just wanted to see some of this weathering stuff, like what he does with it, because this is stuff that I'm never going to buy on my own because I'm like happy with the way I do vehicles. And I was a little concerned getting this, and then realized I really like the way this turns out compared to how I'm doing my other vehicles, and want to go back and redo them. So I'm like, well, but it's an opportunity to hear it from the horse's mouth, from Mig himself. So I did that. So it was supposed to be only from 1 to 3 p.m. And it reminded me a lot of art class. It reminded me of art class. Basically, I've always been an artistic type person, and when you're in art class, there's people that don't know how to draw a circle there. And I'm not saying that there was people that were really incompetent, but there were some folks that definitely were not on my on the same level as I was, as far as wanting to use it. So I mean, they couldn't airbrush things. So basically, it ran really, really slow, and I had to leave at 3. I had a previous engagement that got me in the area that I had to leave by 3. So let me show you what this comes with. And it comes with a how-to book, and it has all these products here. In here, it's relatively expensive. It's over $100 for all this. The Atom paints, which I have. I like the old paints, the old Ammo Mig paints, which are a little different. The original ones, they come in Vallejo style bottles. But this is this new formulation. Okay, it's a new Dunkel Gelb. I've got all these colors, I just have them in this style thing, right? And I really dislike painting these by hand. I hate painting these by hand. They airbrush wonderful. I hate hand painting. So I'm thinking, okay, well maybe these will hand paint. And I like them to do both. So it comes in, they're much larger now. Now they're 20 milliliters. 20 milliliters? Yeah, instead of 17 or 18. So, and they don't come with the top of them with a color on it. I used mine as an example and wasted some of my paint and put it on the top. It's like, hey, this is what you should do. And I'm like, yeah, but I put my things in the wall on this end. And I've got that hole, you guys have seen it. And they should have the same circumference, so they'll fit in there. So it comes with Dunkelgelb DG3 RAL 7028, which is the late war. Basically, I think it's like August or something like that, August 44. So any new vehicles that be in there would have that type of thing. Okay, it's got the chocolate brown, which I did use some of it. I feel like it's different than the other chocolate brown. I feel like it's better, different. It's got more red in it. This chocolate brown like lacks red. I like this one. So, and then the Rosetta green, which is the lighter of the two greens, basically gives you the stuff to make this type of a vehicle. Okay, so it doesn't have the olive green, which is kind of grayish or whatever, but I'm willing to make my own greens and browns to be happy. I'm fine sticking with the base colors they say, but you know, these colors in real life, when they were issued to the Panzer crews, they were issued in a paste form, the way I understand it, buckets in this paste form, and they were, let's say, enamel or mineral spirits type colors that had to be cut down using old oil, gasoline, used gasoline, all kinds of stuff. So the color of them varied quite a bit. But anyways, it comes with these colors, plus it comes with some chipping stuff. And some other colors here. So he went through the process here, and we didn't get very far. He also gave everybody a turret, a 1/35th scale Porsche or pre-production model King Tiger turret to work on. He's like, okay, everybody do this, and everybody do the other thing. And we got like 3 steps in a 12-step process, so we didn't get very far before we ran out of time. Because he did do a good job of going over to people and seeing who needed help. I didn't need any help, so we really didn't spend any time with me. But anyway, so it comes with 3 brushes, some oil brushers, streaking stuff. Really didn't get to use any of this stuff here. Some odorless thinner, which is funny because it literally is odorless. I didn't believe it. I'm like, it has no odor to it. Now, the stuff that you cut this with, like for instance, these washes, these enamel washes, they do have smells. These do have an odor, but the odorless in here. So I messed with only a couple of the beginning of the steps, and my initial reaction is, I'm probably never going to buy this stuff again because I'm fine with the method that I do. Like literally, the very first thing he did was, okay, give everything a pigment wash, and the pigment wash is too light for me. Like I use something that's the strong tone, like I get it in darker. It's just you add a step that, like, I don't mind adding a step, but like I can't tell the difference. And I mean, I had my super readers on and everything. I'm like, nah, I can't really tell the difference. So yeah, it was this this filter, this tan filter. You can't you can't tell the difference whether you use it or not. But anyways, it was kind of a neat experience. It does have one-shot primer. I'm a big fan of that. I'm a fan of some of this stuff. Like I like their paint. I don't know how the Atom paint is. I suspect it'll be better than this, which I don't have a problem with. But the one-shot primer is great. This is the go-to stuff. So I was low on this anyways. So and then we got some oil brushers here and stuff. I may tinker with it, but I'm like not in a hurry to change how I'm doing everything because I'm happy with the way I'm doing it. And you know, he's a business guy, and he seemed like a really nice guy in person. But you know, I use everybody's stuff. I use craft paint. I use Vallejo. I use war painters. I use, you know, so he's not going to promote all those other ways of doing it because he's trying to sell his products. If I didn't have any of those other products, I can see, okay, well, this is good, and I like this audit, and I like this process, and I like this one. But I already have stuff I'm happy with, and I already have stuff that I have plenty of. It's not like, okay, well, we're not going to use these anymore. So I don't know how much of this stuff I'm actually going to use other than the paints here and the primer. I may tinker with it some, but, you know, it's, you know, maybe this is good if you don't have anything. You know, but a lot of these products are enamel products. Any of these that have this type of top that has almost like a medicine bottle, these are enamel type products. So, yeah, anyhow. So, I don't know that it was weird using expensive brushes too. And to be honest with you, some of them I got have a couple stray hairs. So these are significantly more expensive brushes than the ones I use, and I don't know that they're that much more expensive. Like I said, I try to be frugal when I can, so that when there's some things you need to spend money on, that are expensive, like an airbrush. Like I don't think you should buy a $30 airbrush. Buy expensive paints and buy a $30 airbrush. No, not unless you don't value your frustration. And you want to be frustrated cleaning it and getting it to work and all that stuff. But they handed these little. It was an airbrush made by Creos, and it was a .2, and the bottom of it came with like a battery pack, and it was kind of it's not too different than this. And the airbrush basically fit on top of it, and this was a rechargeable thing that said like it was 175, 50, or 25%. It was illuminated how much strength was in it, and it worked pretty well except for two things. You couldn't adjust the air pressure on it, so it was constant. I don't know whether it was set at like 20 psi or something like that. I feel like that's about where it was. It was around 20 psi. And you have this big bulky thing, so if you tried to get to something like this, you had to angle it. You're fighting this much. It's in the way. So in theory, it worked pretty well, but and because it only had 20 psi, I found it very difficult to clean. Like if you wanted to change colors, there just wasn't enough ass behind it to pushing all that stuff out. So now I think the bottom is a separate thing. So you could take your Wada HPCS, plug it into the top, screw it on there, and then you're good to go. But that's like if you're going to travel with it. And I'm like, I don't know how many of us are actually like, okay, we're going to go and spend a week somewhere else. Let me take some stuff to airbrush, because then I gotta take my lights too, right? Because I don't airbrush, and I wouldn't do hobby work in just any light. I mean, we gotta have good light, Yeah, the biggest problem with the seminar is that there wasn't enough time. Now, I understand it ran late, and I saw them filming it, so it may end up being up on their site sometime. The good news is I was on the front row, which is good because I'm hard of hearing. Not that he was that difficult to understand, but if they film it, then I'll put a link up to where it is. But I think that would not be a good seminar. Like I don't think using this stuff is good for somebody who's just starting modeling. I think you need to try doing other stuff and not be happy with it before you go to something like this. On my end, I'm like, okay, I would have wanted to know, okay, show me how to use these splashes and stuff, right? Because you get some of these splashes and you use like a toothpick, and you're like, I may not like how it looks, but let's show me how how it is. So there's one of the products that we use. This shader was really interesting. It's almost like an ink, and he ran it through the airbrush, and I did some of it, and it's like, it worked pretty well, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it may be something like I'd be tempted with this to be like, okay, I'm going to do my plane, right? I want to do a plane in like a metallic finish, and I already have this odorless thinner. Like I already own this, so I'm like, okay, well maybe I'll get the pigment for like the dark panel lining one, right? Because I don't have to buy this anymore because I have it. That sort of thing. So, and the streakers, airbrush, oil brushes. I haven't even opened these things. See what this is. This is like nail polish. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put this on a palette and use it, and I think you could thin this down with this odorless stuff. So I think a little of that's gonna go a long way, but that's gonna take the place of my my quick shades, and I'm pretty happy with Tony's tones. There's no reason really to replace that. What's this down here? Maybe a free sticker or something like that? No, I guess this is the person that checked it out. Anda! Okay, so anyhow. So I am curious to see how these paints are different than the other ones. I did airbrush this one, and it airbrushed just fine. Like I said, the color was even better. I didn't keep that turret. I was getting ready to leave, and like, hey, don't you want your turret? I'm like, I don't do 1/35 scale stuff. Like, it just be in my way here, you know. It wasn't anything spectacular, but and I'm not an airbrush expert. I probably never will be an airbrush expert, and I'm okay with that. But I was way ahead on some other people. Some other people there that were like, which way's up on it? Not so much, but anyhow. So now I got this thing. I don't really like this light green. I don't, it's not that I dislike the color as is, but it looks avocado to me. And it's just, you know, I got some late war vehicles. I could probably do one of them like that, but, you know, he's got some pigments in here to do, and I'm not going to use the pigments. I'm not going to put these light colors inside of cracks and crevices. That's just not my style, you know. So, anyhow, back to the palm trees. So I was a little disappointed. You know, I was expecting A and I got C, but I would have never bought that had he not been there to do it. So it's like, you know, the seminar is free, you just buy the thing. I think that's probably a pretty good deal. You know, I think that's a good deal. You know, the seminar is free, you just got to buy this set. I'm like, all right, that'll work. Had I not had an engagement and I would have driven down there just for that, I would have stayed till the end. You know, I would have stayed till, you know, I think the guy was willing to stay till like 6 p.m. or 7 or something like that. I think, and I was a little disappointed because I got there early. I got there like, the seminar didn't start till 1, and I got there at 11:30. It's like, all right, well, I'll get to chat this guy up, right, before the seminar starts, right? Because you know, he speaks some English, and I can talk to him in Spanish, and, you know, we'll have a good old time and trade, you know, information. And he didn't show up there until like 3 minutes afterwards. He's on Spanish time. He's on Latin time. So, you know, I told my wife, I said, you know, I don't give myself enough credit sometimes. I need to, like, I don't do everything perfect, but if something doesn't turn out to my liking, I have enough skills. Let's see where my super readers are. I have enough skills to be able to change it, know what's wrong with it, and be able to modify it. And I think a lot of people, that's just by the nature of just doing this for this long. You know, and I think a lot of people don't have that, or, you know, freak out. But, you know, I think we got this shit down. So before we start putting grass down, because that's really the next step, I'm going to take these little spots that have this rock that we put on there, and we're going to try to differentiate this rock and make it look a little different. Of course, all our little space grubs here, they're all dried. He snuck in a siesta. He may have. He may have. That was really annoying, traveling to Spain and like, oh, we're gonna close now. Like, okay, well, I understand wanting to close early, but why even bother opening back up in an hour or two? You know, maybe that's their lunchtime. I was like, it's a little too late for me to have lunch at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. You know, that's not my thing. Now, I'm going to probably stick with these colors because it's easier to identify what they are. And this is the mushroom one? No, this is the barnwood. I think we're going to use some of the barnwood on this and dry brush just a wee bit. Although, let me take a look at it. It may have a little bit of pink in it, and I'm really not interested in having pink in that area. But, you know, a lot of people were there. I met some folks and had some nice conversation with some of them, but I realize that modelers are kind of an interesting brew. A lot of people just want to go and A lot of people are afraid of giving other people credit when you see something really awesome. Almost like, oh man, that's somebody else's idea, and I don't want to promote them. I'm like, why? Like they're an asshole or a communist or something? It's I don't get it. So, anytime I see something like, old Kurama Boss's formula, I'm like, I'm excited to pass on that information. Something that could like somebody runs into a stumbling block and they can't make any further progress because of whatever issue they're having. And if somebody solves it, like they need to be recognized. They should be recognized so that other people might be tempted to like, help other folks out. Not be like, well, I'm not gonna say anything to anybody because nobody's gonna care. Like the situation I had recently, I'm like, okay, well, I spent a long time writing all this stuff down for the couple of newsletters, and nobody even acknowledged that it was even on there. I'm like, okay, well, that's all fine and dandy, but you guys were the ones that were pushing me to make those articles on there, so I won't do that again. And maybe I'm doing them a favor. I'm like, good, that guy wrote too much stuff, but I don't really want to keep this information to myself. It's like, I don't get a thrill out of like, hey, let me not tell anybody all the secrets, all the tricks. Okay, this one's got a couple of them as well, and we may end up doing a lighter color than this and hitting some of those spots as well. But anyhow, would I do another seminar? Probably. I'd probably do it again. Now that I kind of know what to expect, but if they're going to do some products now, they definitely changed the inventory of their entire store significantly. Almost all of this is like pushed to the back corner. Like I saw they still carry this. And this pushed back. I don't remember how much this retails for. Well, I'm gonna say it retails for about $12, $13. The new one with the atom paints retails for like $20. So it's a significant increase. I don't know if the paints are that much different. We'll just have to wait and see. They are more volume, but I don't want to jump and say it seems a little Games Workshop-y to me, but it might be. Of course, Games Workshop made the bottle smaller, charged more, and then changed the formula to something that's shittier. And I know for a fact that the atom paints are bigger, so that doesn't apply to them. And I haven't tested them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're significantly better. So in that case, that's not a Games Workshop-ish type thing. But we'll see. We'll find out next time we got to airbrush some German vehicles. But I am a little glad that I was disappointed. Because now I'm not distracted to go and paint a bunch of German vehicles right now. Now, they did have some books. I didn't pick any of them up. But I did flip through some books that they have that MiG has on Sherman tanks, for instance. Had some really good stuff on Sherman tanks. And he's got like a 5-part series. I don't know why, but it's like a 5-part series of German vehicles in Italy only. And it's like hardback and everything. Unfortunately, it's 99% historical photographs, but it's photographs I've never seen before. But, yeah, a lot of his books have illustrations by that Igor. I don't remember how to say his last name. Well, his last name starts with a D. And Igor was, I think that's what his name, or is it Ivan? I don't know, one of those guys. And he was promoting his own set of like illustrations. He does really good illustrations. I don't know how accurate some of them might be, but he does do some inspirational artwork. That's for sure. So I know a lot of MiG's books have Igor Dochnik, something like that. They have a lot of his artwork in it. So, what is it? What is his name? The Kursk book. is on there. Let's see. Let's find this guy. I think he's an Igor. Dunchik. Igor Dunchik. Yeah, he's the guy that does all this stuff. And a lot of the artwork is I know that it gets used in these books and his own. I just don't know that I don't know if anybody else is using them, but it's good artwork. So the Sherman Tank book is full of that stuff, and it goes through all the Commonwealth and Africa stuff, and I don't know if there's anything I would find that useful at this point, but definitely interesting to look at. Okay, I'm going to come in with a lighter color in after that with this. Now, all of these plants are loose. Remove all these. Just so you have some variety of different terrain to have in there. And I use everything. I mean, you get somebody like him, and he'd probably frown on me using craft paint. Well, I don't want to spend a lot of money on something that I just kind of haphazardly throw away everywhere. And the craft paint works. I know people that paint figures, like 15 millimeter figures using craft paint. That's taking things too far, okay? But, will it work? Probably. But for terrain, we use craft paint. You don't have to worry about wasting it, kind of thing. All right, I'm going to take what's lighter than this one. And maybe I may have to mix my own. Let's add a little bit of white. And maybe go 50-50, halfway to white with this. Maybe something like that. So basically the moral of the story is if you're happy with the way you're doing things, keep doing it that way. Don't go out and buy some other product that don't go and create problems you don't already have. Where's the big one? The big one that takes up all the space. couple guys were surprised that I had driven that far for the seminar. I'm like, it's not that far. It's just a couple hours, man. That's nothing in America. I mean, I know 2 hours you can get from the Humber to Scotland. Not really, but, you know, 2 hours is nothing. And I was already in that town. We had to go to a wedding, you know. Luckily, it was at a time that I was able to do both things. I didn't even make it back to, you know, I'm like, I could have stayed longer, but I'm like, nah. Now, by the time I get to something new that I really need help with, it's going to be like 8 o'clock at night. So, and then my wife's like, well, you should teach a class. I'm like, I do. I'm teaching it right now. I'm just, you know, I don't charge for it. I got you to subscribe. Well, I can't afford your subscription. Dude, just hit the like button and subscribe. That's it. You know, I'm not trying to convert anybody. You do things the way you like doing, that's fine. If you like to prime things in white, go right ahead. Did you manage to show the channel to anyone there? No, they didn't fucking care. Didn't care. And I'm not a salesy person. I'm not a salesy person. Salesy people I find very fake. You know, I'll mention it in passing it, and people that aren't interested in it, I just won't tell them about it. It's not like, you know, it's like, not like it's my livelihood or something. So, yeah, and that happened to me. I've gone to several model meets, and that's kind of the same way the people are. I think it's a people problem. It's not necessarily a whatever necessarily this particular hobby, because it happens at car shows too. You go to a car show and nobody can say anything nice about anything you have. It's almost like makes you less of a man. And you know, I like saying things how it is. So if I see something that I really like, I like telling the person, hey, I really like that thing you made. I mean, unless the guy is like seems like an asshole or something like that, which how am I going to know, because I haven't interacted with him yet. But I like rewarding people with something that they've done correctly. Because I don't want to make up shit. You know, like I may see something I don't like, I won't say a thing. You know, but if there's something I genuinely like, yeah, I like to say something about it. Reward the guy. You know, it's like, man, there's people that really enjoy my stuff. I think I'll share it more often. That kind of thing. You know. But he was too busy. I just figured, I'll talk to him, get a photo op with him. You know, just something fun to say, you know. Then I can say, who's the most famous? When somebody says, what's the most famous person you met? I don't have to say Phil Barker. I can say, oh, Mig Jimenez. I got a picture here with him. But I'm not a very groupie person. You know, the guy seemed like a genuinely nice guy, though. So I'll give him that. That's good. He wasn't, you know, but he does that for a living. So he's got to, you know, he's got to be promoting that kind of stuff. I think he's in town, or he's in the country for a big model show they're having in Virginia, which I have no interest in going to. But, you know, I really don't want to push my channel on him, because, you know, I don't, like I said, he makes a product, I don't like it, I'm going to tell you, this is crap. He's like, well, I don't want that. What's this guy know? I said, it's just a matter of opinion, you know? I haven't encountered anything really it's that way, but, you know. I'm going to focus on the things I like, not the things I dislike. Okay, so we've got, I think we did all of them, right? We did all of them again. All right, I got to figure out what color grass I'm going to do. Or I'm going to do one of my, we'll punt, and we'll figure it out later. Well, I do have to make another one of these. So let's punt and figure it out. This goop's got to dry on this thing, whatever I do with it, but. I think I was the youngest guy there. I don't feel young. I certainly don't feel old. Actually, if I'm going to be honest with you, I'm always honest with you, but to tell you the truth. Why? Because I tell you the lie all the time? No. That's just a damn saying. I feel young more than I do feel old. So. And you go to one of these model things and you really feel young. Because, like, man, you got some set people that are in their late 60s and early 70s and are acting like they're 20 years older than they are. What's up, the Hoffman? You play any cards lately? The tournament ended and I started another one and getting real tired of these assholes using commandos. Playing, not figuring out a deck, just kind of do what they've heard. Cheese gaming. Where's my favorite new toy? Here it is. Hot glue gun, baby. Hot glue gun. This thing works great. So, it wasn't as awe-inspiring as I thought it was going to be, but at the same time, I didn't feel the need to redo everything I've done. So, I guess that's a win. And I do have some enamel products, so I might be able to now. So I might be tempted to mess with them a little bit. Mess with that. All right, we need an X-Acto knife. Okay, we need some corkage. And we don't have one open, right? Nope, we do. We have half of a sheet open. Okay. As the kids say, sounds like a skill issue. Man, that's saying that chaps my rear end. Arma 3, it has some great World War II mods. I've heard of Arma 3, but I'm kind of done with the first-person shooter thing. I've done all... I'm a little disappointed in World War II games because I just assumed that, World War II fanatics would be playing them, and that's not true. That's not true. There's too many people, I think, that are they're worried about, this is a weird cut on this thing. I should just be able to fold this and fold this in half. There's no substitute for experience. There's just no substitute for experience. Because it's like, if you're experienced, even if it's something I've never done before, you kind of understand how long something's going to take, right? So you're not like, man, this is taking 4 hours, man. I was expecting this to take 15 minutes. And like, well, do you have any experience with this stuff? I mean, it takes a while. Let's try to rough cut this a little bit. So you have that, and then also the experiences, like I've said before, you realize when you're on the wrong tack. And it's trying to like, okay, if I keep going down this route, I'm not going to be happy with how this turns out. So let's not do that, Let's have this kind of tapered enough and go around. probably shouldn't have rough cut it like this. A little, maybe not good for the bottom section. All this stuff gets reused though. Yeah, I suck at first person shooters who has a great third person mode as well. As a military simulator, it helps me not to buy any tanks right now. I can ride around tankettes and jihas. Exactly. Well, there's a lot of value in that. And other people might think, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, I'm talking about playing, what's that thing? War Thunder. I play War Thunder, and I can fly around on a plane and not feel like I'm building planes. Or World of Warships. Even though World of Warships, I really like the way World of Warships looks. But it is just anti-common sense in so many things. With the whole broadside, and not going broadside to somebody, but I was in a Sendai the other day, light cruiser. And I wanted to, because it's got torpedoes on both sides. So I launched torpedoes on one side and trying to make this tight turn to come back and unload the other side at point blank range at like a German battle cruiser, like a Moltke or something like that. I think that's what it was. Von der Tann or Moltke. And it couldn't make the turn quick enough. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to ram them. Because we're like really close. And I ram them and I end up sinking. I think we sank each other. I damn near sank or something like that. Flames of War just released a bunch of plastic 15mm Japanese stuff. My wallet almost suffered irreversible damage. Well, I'm not going to talk you into buying them. Because I think that we all need to be happy with what we have, not what we don't. Oh, Hoffman, which 20mm Japanese did you get? I meant to ask you that the other day. I gotta remember how I did this. Well, we'll see how this cuts, because the other day, now how is this one different than this one? Okay, it's about the same length, but that's fine with this. We'll make other ones. I think this is probably a good size. We'll see how this behaves on the edge. If not, we'll have to replace this blade, because this took a little too long. I'm just going to go ahead and replace the blade. This cork dulls it quite a bit. Yeah, but it keeps me from buying ships. It keeps me from tempted to go to one of these shows and buy some 700 scale ships. Like, no, I don't need to do that. I can enjoy, looking at them and all that kind of stuff. Thank you for being a moderating voice in your hobby. No, I mean, I'm really good at not buying stuff. And here's my secret, okay? I've bought a lot of stuff before and not done anything with it, and I don't have those things anymore. So that's the first thing, and then you realize how it truly doesn't make you happy. And the problem is, buy stuff when you need it, or something that's not available anymore, like a really, 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 really cheap. But new stuff is available all the time. There's no hurry to buy that shit. No, but what I do is, I imagine like I have it in my hand. What am I going to do with it? Do you want to mess with that next? No, I want to finish what I'm doing it. So why are you buying it in the first place? And none of us have a completely disposable income. We have to choose what we're going to have and what we're not going to have. And it's good to have things to look forward to buy that you don't already have. If you buy everything you want, no point in living. It's your Japanese are from Battle. Oh my God, those are the best. Those are the best. You have the same Japanese I have. Those are not PC Japanese. I don't know how those castings are, okay? Because those castings are, that sculptor is the one that got me into 20mm. That sculptor is my hero. I don't really have a hero other than that guy. That guy was brilliant. And and his Japanese are great. They got guys with glasses, guys with buck teeth. A little bit, not everybody, but they're cool. And every pose is different. Yeah, those are the old combat miniatures. That's Dave Alsop's figures. They're great figures, great figures. You got guys like netted camo. I mean, some really cool looking guys. A couple guys with a helmet pushed back. Like, how's that going to fall off his head? Yeah, I don't know how Battle Valor's castings are because, unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize that molds wear out. Especially if you're casting something that is very hard, but the mold is very soft. So it's like if it's a neoprene, not neoprene, but what I'm saying is, it's some kind of rubbery material. And the mold, obviously, you're putting some kind of white metal type material in there. Then you're going to have that difference of the material, and they wear out. And there's this manufacturer that's out of business now, but they're called Battlefield Miniatures, and they're my second favorite miniature company. Because people say, "Oh, don't you like AB?" AB made very limited things 20 years ago. They have a huge range now, but 20 years ago they didn't make that many different things. So it was either combat miniatures, which are the ones that Battle Valor makes. They make other things as well, but they carry those. They have those molds, or Drew's Militia, which became Battlefield. And just before I got into DBA, literally like 6 months, they came out with a Stalingrad range of Germans and Russians for Battlefield miniatures, and they're spectacular. They're no better than the combat miniatures in my opinion. But every figure was different. They had dynamic positions. They have guys. Sometimes one guy's got a bag. Sometimes it's not like everybody has the same equipment. Like everybody has a canteen. Everybody has all these guys have different personalities. And when I got back into doing 20 millimeter 3 years ago, I started to find out where all these companies are, and most of them were out of business, including Battlefield. Now, these figures were brand new, and apparently their molds wore out, and then the company went kaput, and you can't have them anymore. Did I remember who made those Indiana Jones and Steamer Crew? I do not. I dread another 15 millimeter manufacturer retiring, etc. Yeah, we've lost a lot. Lost a lot this last year. Well, hopefully so. But that's how these things are. That's how these manufacturers are. There's some old guy, or maybe somebody who didn't start that was old, but and they did it because either they found a way to live on the cheap, or they have a spouse that could carry the. But anyway, so it's a cottage industry. It's one guy doing them all, and if they have kids, they're probably tired of this industry that doesn't pay, because miniatures don't pay. It's not, nobody's getting rich off this stuff, and they don't want to continue it when their dad passes away. And that's what a lot of this stuff is. It's like, if that's not your passion, probably the biggest loss I would think that I can think of is Legio Heroica. Legio Heroica figures are like second to none. I don't have any because they showed up on the scene a little too late, and a lot of my figures I've got because other people don't want them. Like, those are no good. I have no problem painting what you call no good figures, right? They paint up just fine. Museum. I'm not talking about the new museums. I'm talking about the old museums. Museums, irregular, all that kind of stuff. Minifigs. Like, those are yesteryear's figures. I said, well, I never built them. Like I'm doing old Airfix kits. Oh, I remember having that when I was a kid. Well, I never had it as a kid. So for me, it's a new experience. Yeah, I don't want to buy something that, I used to have as a kid, Battle Valor do Planet of the Apes in 15 millimeter. The only thing I regret is I didn't get any machine gunners. I didn't notice it until too late. Some of their machine gunners have bayonets on them. Well, the good thing is you're in the States. He's in the States. So if you get around and here's what you do. You promise yourself you're not going to buy any more until you're done painting the ones you have. And when you have them, I give you full permission to buy more. Okay? Because you've earned them. That's how I do stuff. I'm like, I'm not buying any more of these things until I use the ones I have. And then when you use the ones you have, then you can award yourself the rights to buy more. Or you can like order them right now. One that's a big loss, but not a big loss for me, is FAA. I hate FAA. Sorry. The guy who sculpted him might be the nicest person in the world. I don't like his style. I don't. And I didn't like Britannia either. Britannia's weren't bad, but their feet were their shoes. Yes, their shoes were a little too small because their feet were small. But the problem is everybody looked like the same person. Look at those. Look at the Battle Valor figures you have. They all look like different people, and not awkwardly so. FAAs, they all look like the same gaunt guy. They look like they have a very gaunt face, like Eddie from Iron Maiden. Looks good on a zombie, not a zombie, a mummy, but not so. I don't want my figures looking like mummies. Gaunt. With that said, all those guys sculpt better than I do. I'm not a sculptor, and I'm glad that there's different manufacturers so people have options. My original Mitch that I started doing this 20mm stuff with, he loved FAA, and he did not like combat, and I was exactly the opposite. But so many companies went out of business in those 20 years that I left them on their own, and they went sideways. MMS was a favorite. MMS went under. The best manufacturer, even to this day, I would say is Cromwell. Cromwell stuff is incredible. Incredible. Cromwell stuff is as good as Ron's 3D print stuff. Except there's zero chance of them having one. Cromwell stuff's incredible. I wish it was 1/72nd, not 1/76, but with that said, Cromwell's incredible. Cromwell went out of business. Old man Cromwell passed away. And that wasn't his last name. I don't know what his name is. There's lots of stuff out there, but a lot of guys have been out of business. And 15mm, Venexia. Remember Venexia? Venexia passed, I don't know what happened to Venexia, but they stopped making stuff. A couple different guys, I think, have picked up their things. I think now, is it a regular that has Venexia models for their Renaissance stuff? I think so. So you hate to see when some really cool mold just goes out of production. Hasegawa does 72nd Japanese Airmen settle. It does cross-section Betty bombers. Don't come with them. Gave me some really good ideas for a game. Lancashire, that's it. Lancashire and Irregular. Yeah, they're similar quality. That's why I got them mixed up. Lancashire, yeah. Who's the yesteryear figures by that's not the line of them, but by 15mm Co UK or whatever they're called, Alternative Armies. Those are some old figures, and I don't remember who the manufacturer is. You guys will know, but if you told me what they're on, those are the guys that used to make them. Paint up great, and they're old figures. They're not as old as I am, but they're 40 years old. Baueda. See, that's one I wasn't a fan of. I'm not a fan of Baueda. I mean, I wish them well. I just don't like them. And again, my buddy Jeff, the original Mitch, he loved Baueda. I didn't. Cheekbones, cheeky cheekbones. But That was a really popular. Most people really liked them. But there's only a couple of different. Would I use their figures? Absolutely. I have some of their figures and they work fine. Warrior came back. I'm not sure who Warrior. I don't know. Tabletop Games. There you go. The company that I really dislike their style, and it's an American company. Let me think who they are. They only do stuff for Dark Ages. They have a very limited range of things, and they make a bunch of fantasy shit too. And they're out of Georgia. They used to be out of Georgia. Splintered Light. I really don't like Splintered Light style. But they make a lot of stuff, especially fantasy things. But, there's something there for everybody. It's a shame that, when something goes out of business, but that's what it is. You got people that it's not their passion. Like when I'm not around anymore, my daughter's not going to make terrain. I mean, it's like, Coruscant is really strange because Coruscant has multiple different sculptors, and some of the sculptors are really amazing, and some of them are not as amazing, And I don't have any of their figures. They showed up about 10 years too late on the scene. I already had too much junk to paint, so I wasn't really looking for Coruscant stuff to paint. But I've helped other people order Coruscant figures. Does that count? Do I get an assist for that? Some of their Asian figures are really, really nice. But I like to mix and match everybody's figures. I don't really like, okay, we're only going to use this manufacturer for this. I'm like, nah, I like to mix and match them. Especially because it's like, I already have some of these figures and they're not terrible and they paint up well. Almost everybody's figures will paint up well. Essex, I had a bad taste in my mouth with Essex before I ever got the DVA because I was buying stuff for Armati and they made Armati packs and they gave me the wrong figures multiple times. Like, they make figures for this. I got guys that weren't the right period. And but if I'm buying individual figure packs, I have no problem with, with getting stuff from Essex, but like something pre-made that somebody else tells me, hey, these are the figures you should be using, and they're wrong. I'm like, and they make, it's not like, well, this is the closest we can get with our figure lines. Like, no, they make the right figures. They just gave me the wrong ones. And it happened multiple times. I'm like, I don't want to save money. I want to paint the stuff I want to paint. So, not that I want to overpay, but I'm just saying that, if you get the wrong figures, it doesn't really matter how much you paid for them. You got the wrong ones. It may not matter to some people, but it does to me. I'm still miffed that the old Traveler 15mm sci-fi minis are gone now. Raffam closed. Have you bought any Eureka 20mm figures before? They have a set of all handmade Japs. Think about getting. I have not. Hold on. Eureka. Okay, see, I get Eureka mixed up with AB. And the reason I get Eureka mixed up with AB is the people that import the Eureka into the U.S. also import AB into the U.S. Okay? Eureka figures, I think... I have some... Those Nen Chow guys I have are Eureka, and they are awesome figures. They're absolutely awesome figures. However, I believe that, I'm going to look this up right now. I believe that they have a very unique product line in there. Eureka miniatures in 20mm. And they have some figures that are not loved by everyone. Okay, let me go over to, see, this is Eureka Miniatures UK. US. No, we want to go to the Australia one. That's the real one. I mean, if it works. Okay, here we go. This is the website that we're used to looking at. Someone that looks like this. And if we go over here to browse by scale, and we go to 20 mil, and they have Eureka. No. And then if you look at 1936-45 Japanese, the same sculptor that does the Marines and the Pacific, they have a very unique look. And I don't know how those guys would translate into... It's Mike Broadbent. So I'm looking at these figures, and I'm not loving them. Now, they might paint up okay, but they have a little bit of the... It all looks like the same guy over and over again look. Like, no one particular guy looks bad, but they all look like it's the same fellow. Like clones. They're a little bit cloney. And they have a unique look. They're almost like a bit bug-eyed. And I've had a lot of... I don't know what they look like in person. Let me look at the Japanese. And this is also the Japanese ones that are the same. I'm just not... There's nothing captivating me about them. Like, for instance, let's take a look at this guy. This guy just looks misproportioned. Now, I'm okay with him because it's one guy, but I don't know, just something about him. Just, look at this guy's hand size and his head. And then go look at those Battle Valor guys you have by my favorite sculptor. And they're kind of soft. Like the edges are kind of soft on these guys. I don't know, they have a unique look. Do they look Japanese? The guy that's laying on the ground kind of looks French. I don't know. With that said, I wouldn't be against ordering them. Now, the Nanchow that they make, I don't know who the sculptor was for that. Those are some amazing figures. Those are probably some of the nicest figures that I own of all my 15mm armies. They're amazing. So, Eureka, and I've heard, how did I get mine anyways? Oh, Rich Goss had pre-ordered them. They were on the 300 Club or the 700 Club or whatever the hell it was called, where you had to pledge you were going to buy them, and he did, and he never painted them. And I bought them from here. The Bamboo Freight Train people. But Eureka does that thing where they've got also multiple different sculptors. So you can't say all Eureka figures are this way or all Eureka figures are that way. They all vary on the sculptor. So, but no, I don't know who makes those tramp steamer guys, But they do. I also haven't gone out and looked specifically, but I bet if you go on the miniatures page and ask that, they made this particular set made a lot of figures that I would call non-combatants, which would be useful in a game, not just, people just sitting around on their lilies. I'm just, guys that are like part of a merchant crew, so if you got like a U-boat or something like that, and you want to take over the ship or something like that, well, you need figures for the crew members kind of thing. Or, maybe you have this tramp steamer that's, pulled into Bora Bora or something like that. And you want to have, a dozen guys that are part of the crew or something like that involved in something. And they don't all look the same. They all had personality. They're, World War II version of Firefly or something like that. They're all unique people. Adventurers and things like that, and they were done very much in the style of, if I remember correctly, very much in the style of Copplestone, which I'm a big fan of the way Copplestone does things. He just does things in scales that aren't really appropriate to what I'm doing, So, and I don't really want to jump scales for a particular sculptor. Although I did that for 20mm. The reason I'm even doing 20mm is because Alsop got me, got me hooked on that with his sculpts. So, but he does some 15 millimeter stuff. His well, if I did Civil War, he's got some ragged rebs and things like that. He's got some French and Austrian figures that for Napoleonics that are just incredible looking. You know. Okay, how are we going to? Let's see. Let's put the another level here. And we'll leave this straight edge here. That's not a problem because we'll link this up with another straight edge. Yeah, Traveler used to be a real popular game back in the 80s and stuff. I don't think that I've ever played it. I don't really know what the plot... I mean, I know it's science fiction, but... I tell you what, when I went to that place in that awesome hobby store in Calgary called the Century Box, they had a lot of Ratham stuff there. And I bought 4 or 5 different Ratham kits. And after I struggled putting them together, it didn't leave me any interest in putting another Ratham kit together. So, you know, I don't wish the guy anything bad. Well, it's too late. He's passed away. But, you know, I probably wouldn't have bought another Ratham thing. You know, it was just they're very gappy. They have a lot of gaps in their products, like physically, like they don't fit together well, and yeah, some of those M8, that M20 and the M8 armored car, they took a long time to put together. I had to really like baby them. There we go. Something like that. I use these small bits to kind of put all the pieces together. They're putting a dinosaur together. Oh, keep your pants on. We're talking about dinos. Okay, we'll fill in this back with something else, and up here we've got some other sections we can add on there. Yeah, and there's definitely the availability of things definitely affects the price of things. I remember back in the early days of the miniatures page, there was these figures called Demon World that I don't know who the hell they were made of. They might have been made by Demon World. They were 15 millimeter fantasy, and were very much done in the style of Games Workshop. They were Games Workshop style figures in 15 millimeter, and they had gone out of business. And the prices that people were selling those things on eBay was ridiculous. About 4 or 5 years ago, or maybe even more, like 6, they got made again, picked up by somebody else. You know, once they became available, all of a sudden, as Jeffrey likes to say, the FOMO, fear of missing out, disappeared. You know, and now they're reasonable again. But, you know, those went for like ridiculous amount of money. You know, something was like a $15 pack was going for like $60 or something like that. Or at least people were trying to sell it for $60. They're great looking figures, you know, and they're done in that Games Workshop style, which I kind of like, you know. I mean, Games Workshop's not my thing. You know, I don't really, their business model's really not compatible with my psyche. But I like some of the things that they do. All right, let's put this guy down here. these gooey cobwebs everywhere. Don't go there, Ben. I know, you're looking for a girl that likes gooey cobwebs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wish the cord was a little longer. Really the only gripe I have about that thing. Uh-oh. Had these placed where I wanted them, I done messed it up. Demon World were Metal Magic, who also made the Gladiator Ancients. They had some nice science fiction 28mm that are awaiting re-release with some chap in Alaska, and have been for years now. Wow. Time to look for some other alternatives. Yeah, those Demon World figures, man, they were going for a fortune. I should say, somebody was trying to sell them on eBay for a fortunate amount of money. Whether or not somebody actually bought them, seems like, what it is. Like, there's a book that I have, and I talked about it before. It's out of print, but the author passed away. And I looked for it on, Amazon or whatever, if there was another copy of it. And it's like, somebody's trying to sell it for like $170 or something like that. I'm like, shit, I'll sell mine for 70. Hobby products? Okay, yeah. I like the look of those figures. I really like the look at them. And now I want to say Raul Partha has them now. I could be wrong, but I want to say Raul Partha has them. I don't like Games Workshop's trolls. I like the Raul Partha troll with the what do you call it, the corn cob type looking nose. He's got the hair that's back kind of like one of the Gauls. Joseph Ochman did some of their sculpts, as did Bob Ollie, my two sculpting heroes. Well, I've heard of Ochman. I've got some of his 15mm figures through Gladiator, and they are nice figures. They are nice figures. They paint up great. They do paint up really well. I'm gonna put this slab of thing right here. It's almost time for a reload on this thing. I don't think I'm ever going to run out of this hot glue, though. The thing I bought off Amazon came with so much of this. I don't see how I could run out of it. I think the only 15mm. I'm right. Good. I gotta practice this stuff because I had all this 15mm knowledge, and I'm not even a fantasy 15mm guy. But I got all this 15mm, I was like, I'm a deluxe surfer, right? I'm gonna forget this stuff if I don't regurgitate it at some other date. I even thought of, remember that thing that I've talked about, that Atlantis setting, that fantasy Atlantis setting that I have? Peter Pig, who I'm a big fan of, I wish Peter Pig made more stuff, you know, but they don't. But that's okay. They make some fantasy figures, and their elves would be perfect for Atlanteans. You know, guys that didn't have like little pointy ears and shit like that. They've got those long type shields. I was actually considering like, you know, that would make them really good Atlantean figures with spearmen and stuff like that. Because by Peter Pig, they look really, really good. At least they look really, really good on their page. You know. Essex Adventurers. Are Essex fantasy figures viewable on their website? Like pictures of them? Yeah, I'm gonna cut this short like this, and then we'll put a couple outcroppings here, or you know maybe one here. But I will put a little. We're gonna mind the gap and put one there. Mind your gap. Keep your mouth shut. Mind your gap. I love this hot glue gun stuff. I also haven't burned myself yet. But it's just I like anything that you can glue and keep going. Just keep the ball moving. Keep it going. Peter Pig, really nice Viking, Norse figures. They are good. The problem is those guys are a little on the small side. And if anybody ought to be big, it's the for instance, they would be great for Romans, right? They make Romans. Romans supposedly were smaller in stature than most folks. Boom, done. Big guys like Saxons and Vikings, probably not the best idea. You know, but sculpting wise, yeah, they have a lot of flavor with the U, flavor. For sure. Those used to be imported by, and they still might. They used to be imported by Brookhurst Hobbies. But Brookhurst Hobbies, as far as I can tell, at least for historical miniatures, is a shadow of its former self. Now, one of the guys in one of the model meetings I was talking to this said that they went to California. The Brookhurst Hobbies actual store was incredible, which I don't doubt. But they have a lot of like modeling things, you know. And in the early '90s, we used to order a lot of our stuff from Brookhurst. I don't know how I found out about them. Probably on the miniatures page. But Jeff and I used to order from Brookhurst fairly regularly. And the big joke is we'd get it we'd say that we'd receive the order before we made it because it's in California. So by the time we order at lunchtime, they get the order before they even come into work. So it was time was on our side, so to speak. You'd order on Monday, you get it by Thursday. So. Well, I appreciate you guys being on here relatively early. I mean, it is a work day. Just trying to make up for lost time not being on here this morning. And a short one on Saturday, which actually went on a little longer than I was expecting it to go. So that's good. But we also got out of town later than we thought we were going to. So it was like, a catch-22. I think this one, for whatever reason, is going to have some what's this, level 4? We're going to have some level 4 stuff. We're gonna have a ridge here of level 4 stuff right here. Just to make it a little different. Just to mix it up. Now, I wish I actually had some big rocks. I wouldn't mind putting like a big rock here or something. So, not huge, but just something. Bookers used to do full page adverts in the War Games monthlies years ago. Maybe where you find them. Yeah, they probably advertised all the time on the miniatures page. They had a lot of 20 millimeter stuff. And then, There's not that many people in the U.S. doing 20 mil. And then who's the folks that used to carry? Oh man, what's the name of those guys? The guys that did all the Renaissance stuff that I'm a big fan of, and then the guy took over and nobody could get any business with him. Shit. What's his name? They make 15 millimeter stuff. They're almost done in the style of tabletop and only one figure per pack, one figure pose per pack. I really like them. Can't remember who they are. But the last square used to carry them all. That's how I found out about them. I went to Historicon in 2010, and the last square had a setup there in 2010 and 2011, and then they didn't come to any more Historicons after that. And then shortly thereafter, the store closed. Shit, I don't remember what they're called. See, that's what happens. You don't talk about that stuff anymore. No, not Mike's models. Not a fan of Mike's models. I don't hate them, but they're quirky looking. Shit. I should be able to find them on my page. Let's see. How do I find my own page? WordPress. Okay. And which one of these armies has them? Medieval German, I think, has some of them. Roundway. Yeah, they used to import Roundway. And Roundway paint up great. Come on. Make it bigger. Yeah, here's some German crossbowmen. Mounted crossbowmen. Yeah, I don't know what happened to him. There was a guy that took over for him. He had all the stuff. I dealt with him. He was really slow to reply. And this was before COVID. He was already having health issues. You know, that might have just pushed him over the edge. You know, this organ gun, this German organ gun is Roundway. No, Two Dragons had very limited stuff. I'm not a huge fan of Two Dragons stuff. I do have some other things, but they're just... Yeah. Not a... Oh, here's those Nan Chow figures I was talking about. These are freaking gorgeous figures. By Eureka. Beautiful figures. Alright, so we got a level 4 here. Let's just build up some more other stuff here, and then so this will be ready to goopify. What's up, Kevin? My friend is always went to Brookhurst when they were in California, which was often for SCA events. Anime Expo, Disneyland. One time they seemed to be getting rid of their miniatures. Yeah, it seemed like that was the case. 76 degrees low, 64. What's the weather in Florida? Well, a couple of weeks ago, my car was 115. It's been in the feels like over 100 for sure. You know, it isn't that bad. It isn't that bad unless it's at night. The nights are intolerable with the humidity and the bugs. But in the daytime, it's not horrendous. And no, you don't get used to it. You get used to humidity. But we went to a wedding that was outside yesterday, and it was hot as fuck. I mean, you know, but we knew it was going to be hot. So... But you know, there's stuff like we ended up staying at this condo, and we had what did we see yesterday? Dolphins. There was like dolphins. There was like, you know, you've got like this, you know, you got the bay, and within 20 feet of the bay, there was three dolphins. They were just playing around, grabbing fish. You can see the fish like squirm. You know, so there's a lot of beauty that goes along with the damn heat. You know, but who painted the miniatures? Those are all mine. That's on my WordPress site that I don't promote anymore. That, you know, that's the whole thing is, if I don't do the written stuff anymore. I don't do a blogger or whatever, because it just doesn't get any traction. You know, people always say, "Oh, I don't have time to watch your videos that are 3 or 4 hours long." I said, "Well, I don't have time to write a bunch of things, attach a bunch of pictures to it, and then get no proof that anybody even looked at it." You know, because what I'm doing right now is for my own purpose. Love having you guys along, and I probably would have quit by now if you guys weren't along with me. But the written word and like taking pictures of stuff and saying, you know, and talking about them, that would be all for everybody else. So if the everybody else's don't come by, and I have proof that it's doing any good, you know, I don't see what the point is. I don't find it therapeutic to write things out. You know, so um, there's several blogger sites that I've seen that provide a lot of really inspirational stuff, and I don't see people leaving comments on it. So I'm like, so yeah, I don't use that anymore. I don't think I made a post for in 10 years, maybe something like that. So I I did see some old posts. Some old guy came in and put an old post about some battle that Mitch and I did, and he claimed that I did something wrong. I didn't even look at his video. I didn't even look at his comment. I didn't even read where the supposed error was. I just deleted it and locked that post for commenting, because I'm not interested in being put on trial, or, you know, going back and rehashing things. I'm never gonna play DBA again. You know, Scottsdale. Okay, 114 degrees. Yeah, yeah. I don't put things on my site to be put on trial. Sorry, I'm not interested in picking fights, or, you know. Yeah, it's real frustrating. You do things, and we may have actually not done it right, but I'm not interested in finding that out. Like, I'm not going to go back and open up old wounds, so to speak. You know. Yeah, we stopped on the way back from the Bay Area in this place that we wanted to check out. I needed to get coffee, and wanted to check out this one store. Right next to the store was a hobby town, and I'm like, holy shit, there's a freaking hobby town here. I'm like, okay, so I walked in there and said, man, it looks closed. And my wife's like, nah, it's open. Looks like it looks open. It wasn't, and, you know, it probably wouldn't have had anything for me there anyways. But it was one of those. They had an entire RC racetrack, you know, one of those clay things supposedly in the store. It was all gutted. You could look through the window and the lights were on. It was all, you know, gutted. But so I looked at the reviews, and 6 months ago, people were like, this place isn't going to last. So I guess 6 months ago they had it. But a lot of the hobby stores that do exist here in Florida all like focus on like radio control stuff, which, you know, I have zero interest in. You know, I had zero interest in it a long time ago. I have less than zero interest in it now. So okay, I think we're going to put another piece here to strengthen this. Maybe not shaped like that. Maybe a little bit more unassuming, an unassuming shape. across that to strengthen that. Now, I don't have any rocks, do I? And I don't have any. It's not like I can go grab some in the backyard. They don't have them here. I don't think. Ooh, let me see if perchance there's something in here. Where would it be? Here it is. See if any of this stuff works. Yeah, we got little barrels and stuff like that. What's this? Oh, here's where all the packages are that go on the Sherman and stuff. Well, they're in the right place. This is where they should be. Yeah, we're good. I need to go to Hobby Lobby and see if there's like a. Yeah, they have like little pendants and stuff to like make, jewelry and stuff out of there. They got some Hindu shit in there that would, you could have like some icon or something like that left here. Let me try something. Let me try something. Let's make one part of this like really tall. It could be like an out because we're going to cover this in goop and stuff. I love working with this material. It's a happy material. You got a lot of crumbles, but the crumbles aren't dusty. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it like holds like together. Hey, Rick. Been a while. Went to Storcon, saw David from Pittsburgh, Mike Finn, Richard Borg. Yeah, I know. You went all the way up there, and then you didn't spend all the days up there. I noticed you had time to like go somewhere else. You went to like a training show. It's good that you went to a lot of different things, but yeah, we were just in your part of the woods for the weekend. We had a wedding to go to in St. Pete yesterday, late, and it just so happened that there was an event that was run by one of the modelers guys that does all his products, Mig Jimenez, and I took part in that. So yeah, I don't see going to Historicon again. And that, with that said, that's not because it sucks. It is just a really, it uses a lot of my days off, and I don't have that many, and even not having that many, let's just put it this way, I'm not going to Historicon again, not because of the cost, because I think by the time you do the math, it ends up costing, I don't know, $400 or $500. Okay, it's worth it. What it's not worth it is it uses a third of my vacation days. You know, and not only that, but I got to do a lot of work ahead of time to leave and then come back and clean it up. It's a pain in the ass. It's not worth it. You know, it is not worth it. It's not worth it for me. So, my last time was in Hobby Lobby. I asked someone where I could find paint, and they said the craft section. I said the whole store is a craft section. Last time I went to Hobby Lobby, the quality of the people that work there is really poor. And that's like the big difference. One of the big differences that I notice now as opposed to before COVID about that time period is nobody gives a fuck about anything. You know, I've worked retail. Retail is not a bad job. It doesn't pay the bills, but retail's not a bad job. So if you have a job that, you know, the worst thing about a job is having the day just drag on and on. And the best way to not make the day drag on is make yourself useful. Like, if somebody needs some help, go help them find it. Here, I'll help you find where this cork is or whatever something is. People don't want to do that anymore. People want to just like, whatever, and go back to surfing on their phones like whatever. You know, you shouldn't be paid. You know, it's fine to surf on your phone, but, you know, everybody's doing that all the time. Nobody wants to do any work. So, yeah, Hobby Lobby definitely had some low quality people last time I was in there. So, like, you know, I just treat it like Walmart. Like, don't ask anybody anything. Like, let me get in and get out and let nobody see me in here kind of thing. You know, so it's a shame, but I definitely could tell a difference in the Hobby Lobby and the Hobby Lobby people. So, okay, I may do a little bit of irregularity here. Yeah, interesting to see how this is going to turn out. Make this. Yeah, Rick, you've got some people that I need to, like, you know. I know you said you enjoy it, but man, I wouldn't be friends with some of these folks that you're friends with. You got some people that just like taking you to task on just about anything you post. I'm like, I wouldn't put up with that stuff. But then you put more controversial stuff out there than I do. I don't post controversial things, you know. But you do have a couple of people that I've blocked, so they can never friend me again. One guy in particular who's like a devout. You got one guy that's like a devout communist. Like, I don't want to even hear that guy breathing. I don't want to hear that guy breathing. I had a friend work at Hobby Lobby. She called it Hobo Lobby, I think. Yeah. Hobo Lobo. Yeah, I hate when people just don't do their job well. And it's not like you don't know the answers, man. You'll figure it out, but just like not give it a shit. I was like, well, I don't want to deal with you. You know? Okay, I think this is probably good enough to go move forward on. So we're going to grab the old goop. Let's see if we can wrap this around somewhere that's not hot so we don't melt through this thing. The only place that I went to that was really easy to find people to help you, supposedly, was Joann's. Of course, they went out of business, but the reason they wanted to help me because they thought I was lost. Like, there's something I can help you find? Like, the fuck are you doing here? You know? Like, you don't understand. I'm a crafty bastard. Like, I belong here. All right. Hobo lobby. Oh, we're doing this wrong. We got to figure out palm trees first. No, we don't. We'll figure them out after we put this goop on. I'll like to live dangerously too. This is gonna have. I can't mess with this until tomorrow. This is gonna take overnight for this to dry. Only thing I don't like about this whole process is you can't keep going. You gotta stop and reevaluate. But the plastic plants have worked really well. They look a lot better. I haven't even dry brushed them yet. They look a lot better than I thought they were ever going to look. And if I don't like how this outcropping thing comes, snap. This stuff would be great to make islands for like a sailing ship game or something like that. Have I posted any of my palm trees? No, not completed yet. Because they're not completed yet. I mean, still got to put grass and stuff on them. You know, of course, this doesn't even have these small plants, and this one doesn't have these other things that get plugged in here. So it's definitely not going to look. Really, you don't need to put a whole lot of worry about this because most of this is going to be covered anyways. You know. Hobby Lobby is the only place I've found that carries Auto World slot cars. Well, I know that they make professional grade slot cars, which is probably what you're into, but I remember I always wanted slot cars as a kid. And I never really understood how slot cars worked. Because I'm like, okay, well, you don't steer, so what's the point? You know, I don't understand what the point is. But I remember getting a birthday gift. Oh, this is like in the late 70s. Probably 80, 81, or 79, something like that. And I had this slot car set. Of course, I'm talking about different slot cars than probably you did. You know, we're matchbox-sized slot cars. And it was a Spider-Man set. I remember there was a Spider-Man car, and there was a van that said villain on the side of it. I don't know if it was black or silver with black writing or white or black with silver writing or something like that. But it was like like an A-Team type of van, you know, like one of those Econoline or something like that, whatever those custom vans that said villain on it. Came with two cars. And a figure-8, you know, black track or whatever. And I got it to work, but it didn't work well. Like it was, you know, it wouldn't consistently work. And I never could understand, like, you know, what's the point of this if you don't have a steering wheel? And I guess the whole thing is you need to lay down on it when it's a straightaway, and when it's a curve, let go of it a little bit so you don't fly off the track. I think that's what the purpose is. But I'm like 7 and 9 years old. I can't figure that shit out. Doesn't make any sense to me. I never really got into slot cars, but you know that I remember having that. You know, there's a couple things you need. You know, when you're a little kid, you can't figure out how they work. Another one was ice cream, right? Like I couldn't figure out, how can you make your own ice cream where they have this stuff called rock salt and has a picture of ice cream on it? Like, why would you use salt on something that's sweet? Like, you know, you're 7, 8, 9 years old. You can't figure that out. My parents don't come from America, so they don't know what the hell ice cream maker is. You know, Don't know how to make freaking ice cream. Ice cream, you buy it pre-made, or you go to you go to a store that has ice cream. I don't know, what's this salty stuff in ice cream? It's things that are hard to figure out as a kid. Same thing. Howard Johnson's. Remember the Howard Johnson's restaurant? Howard Johnson's restaurant. I have a lot, and I don't think we ate there that often, but I have childhood memories of those. They have their hot dogs that came in like a little cardboard boat, and they had banana ice cream there. But they always had it at the cash register because Howard Johnson's restaurants were like the equivalent of like Cracker Barrel the way you are now. We have a bunch of shit by the register for you to like buy. Like, okay, you've already eaten here, but take some of this stuff with you. And they always would have saltwater taffy. Now, I never bought saltwater taffy ever and never could figure out what it was as a kid. Like, why would you want a candy that's salty? Like, again, doesn't make any sense for you as a kid. I don't have anybody to explain these things to me. Hojo's. But it's always funny to look at these nostalgic things and look them up on the internet. And find like the history of like, oh, they all closed down in such and such a time, or looking like one of those volcanoes that kids make for science projects that erupt with using a baking soda and lemon juice or something like that, vinegar and baking soda, something like that. But we'll try to tinker with some of those items that I got from that set, but I think it's not really geared for me because I'm already like happy with how I do things. You know, Mexican candy's salty, so growing up I thought candy could be both. That's what's popular now. We're keeping those 50-year-old cars racing, and faster they went than ever. Any of you guys watch 3D Bot Maker? I think you've said you've watched it before, Kevin. That's the best channel on YouTube. Best that guy's amazing. That guy puts a lot of work into making one of his videos. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a sorry fan. I haven't watched this stuff in a while. I haven't watched this stuff in probably 6 months, whatever. But every time I do, man, it brings a tear to my eye how freaking funny some of that stuff is, especially the Demolition Derby stuff. I've said before, if that guy was in Florida instead of California, I probably would have reached out to him and said, hey, listen, I'll paint some of your figures. I know you do dioramas and stuff. Let me paint some of your crowd figures for you. Get them in there, you know? I don't know whether he'd take me up on it or not, but, you know. Now, California, that's another world away. Now you're hungry for Mexican candy. Yeah, his videos are incredible. And there's a shitload of work that goes into them. My wife can't stand me listening to them because she doesn't like anything that has to do with like announcing like sports or something like that. And like, yeah, that has all that kind of stuff in it. But man, that's some funny stuff. And it reminds me of the games that I played with Mitch. Like really unlikely things happen. Now I don't know how much of it is, you know, the narration. Their narration's definitely done after the fact. You know, because he doesn't miss a beat. And there's rumors that it's just him doing it all, doing multiple voices a la Phil Henry, you know. And I don't know, but, you know, that's watching a lot of Mark Fell. He definitely has some subjects that are unique. Definitely some unique subjects. So yeah, pretty much given up on doing this in the mornings before work. I haven't heard any of you guys complain, so I guess it's not that big of a deal. I'm not doing it to screw anybody over. Just there just isn't enough time to get everything fired up. So yeah, I watched the video the other day that I went over to Mitch's house. We watched the Little Wars video where they did basically a recap of this last Historicon, and I wasn't excited to go there. I'm not saying that from the standpoint that, well, it sucks. Why would I want to go there? It's got nothing to do with that. It isn't worth the trouble. It's a it's a lot of trouble for me. You know, right now a lot more than other years, just with the workload and stuff. But it's like we're good. There's my COVID casualty. I went every year until they stopped having him because of COVID, and then I'm like, well, shit. If I missed it every year, now if I miss another year, it's not that big of a deal. I went like, I don't know, 15, 16 years in a row, something like that. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. That's what, 14 years in a row? And then they stopped having him for one. I went back 2 more, and now there just wasn't anybody that wanted to play EVA anymore. And I'm not going to go just to shop. I don't want to go there to play games. What if the game master sucks? What if the game master is great, but he has a bunch of, penis wrinkles playing in his game? I don't want to deal with some penis wrinkle for 4 hours. Sad about slot cars is the young ones not interested. Hobby probably died with the baby boomers. Young ones aren't interested in anything, unfortunately, but you know what? We don't give a shit about their Fortnite, so screw them. Build the freaking stairway to the sky. Makes no sense. No, sir, I don't do those kind of drugs where that makes any sense. Yeah, it's really, you go to one of those IPMS shows with the models, you really don't have a lot of people. You don't have a lot of war game young people there. People really aren't interested in building models. And there's exceptions to the rule. There's always exceptions to the rule, but just like there's, young ones usually aren't interested in historical gaming. And I don't know if the interest for Gaslands died or not. I honestly don't know. But it was like everywhere, and I don't see it anywhere. But you got to do what you want to do, and if other people want to follow suit and show up, that's cool. If not, it's got to move on. Hey, Kevin, what's the difference between mini 4-wheel drive cars and slot cars? Toy trains, yeah, trains, man. You go to trains, you feel like a young lad there. I remember there was an article. It must have been in one of those railroad magazines or whatever, and I still remember this vividly. Because when I worked at the hobby store, I was the train guy. Because my dad was always in them, so I had that exposure to it. And another guy was the RC guy. I don't want anything to do with radio control. It cost too much money, and I was on extremely limited income. So, that's a bad combination. But anyhow, there was this article in Model Railroad or whatever the hell it was in. This guy had done this setup for a train set, And he created this game where he had every piece of rolling stock had a little index card for it that basically described what the cargo, what it was, what it was. Okay, Burlington Northern coal car or whatever it happened to be, and you'd shuffle them and you would hand out. You'd have like an engine that you'd do, and you would have to get random cars from one place or from every place and move them somewhere else. So it was like a game. Now I don't think it was like timed. Like, okay, you got 15 minutes to do it. Then it becomes like a stress factor, But he had decouplers in different places, so you couldn't touch any of it. It's not like you had to like do it with the engine. I thought that was kind of an interesting concept. Do that, so you basically turned a game into a railroad thing into a game. 'Cause that's really the only thing I don't really like about the railroading thing is because you build it, you do it, and you just run around in a circle. And there's not a lot of point in that. But if you're making a game, okay, well now we're thinking. There's stuff to think about and strategy and stuff like that, and tactics and it must have been a model railroader. Which is funny. I always thought Model Railroader was a much better magazine than Fine Scale Modeler. I've never liked Fine Scale Modeler ever. If you find an article you're interested in, it's like awesome. You'll never. I've never found like two things I was interested ever in one issue of it. It's just all over the place. It'll be like have something on like German tanks. Like, hey, well, this is interesting. What else we got? Nothing else. It'd be like freaking tugboats or something just totally unrelated. I understand you got to keep everybody happy, but as opposed to like war game soldiers and strategy, you find an episode where you find an issue where something's interesting, and you're going to find 5-6 articles that are. There's a train group very close to me. When I went there to check them out, there was a little bit of everyone, but Texas I think is different. So many people moving here. Yep. Well, I'm ready for the summer to be over with, so we can get all these Yankees off our damn roads. There's a lot of people on the road, a lot of people. It's really unpleasant to be out on the interstate. Really unpleasant to be out on the interstate. And a lot of recaps out there too. Another reason I don't like driving at night. You can't see a recap until you run it over. We do the other side already? We did. Okay, so we just have to do the edges when we're done this. And then this is going to have to sit and dry overnight. The only disadvantage of this. Yeah, I love people that move to your state, but then they want to badmouth it. Like if you don't like Texas, don't move there, Man, Texas sucks. Well, why are you moving there? What's that say about the other places that you came from? Recap tire. So, tractor trailers, their tire will wear, but the casing will still be good. So what they do is they remanufacture them and basically put a tread on top of the core, so to speak. The problem with that is that with the heat that there is in Florida and Texas for that matter, they'll get a lot of friction and they'll literally explode. And you've got this piece of rubber that when it's new, it's about that thick side view that is over the entire casing. Imagine like the crust on a piece of bread. Okay, it's basically like you're adding a crust on the piece of bread. But when it gets really hot, it'll explode, and that, if you hit that solid piece of rubber, it's going to destroy your freaking vehicle. You know, plus it can make you lose control, pop one of your tires, and for some reason they're legal. All the things that they want to make illegal, that would be like pretty much top on my list of things to make illegal. And the lobbyists that make recap tires, I think, are somehow they're greasing the wheel, but they're a lot more prevalent in the summertime than the wintertime because of just the excessive heat. But they get glued or whatever onto the casing. I don't know how many times you can actually use the casing before that ends up being an issue. But I mean, unless you don't have a sidewall cut or anything like that, you could reuse it. I don't know, 4 times or whatever. So basically, you're buying a tire for 75% of the cost of a new tire, which when you've got a lot of wheels, I don't think you can use them on steering tires. I think they're illegal. Our company doesn't use them at all. We don't put those recap tires on anything. We don't have a big fleet anyways, but yeah, they're illegal. I think you can't use them on steers at all. So yeah, they also call them road alligators. I've been next to a vehicle when it's exploded, and it's like a freaking grenade of rubber. When you're in Texas, I learned about 15 millimeter Angels Wargaming. Seemed like there was a convention every month in Texas. Well, Texas is a big state. We have a lot of conventions here in Florida, but some of them are science fiction, which I think there's more people that do science fiction that sometimes do historical than ones that do historical that do science. There's just some people that just are science fiction people. They're never going to do anything historical. Now, I'm not opposed to playing science fiction. I'm just not going to build any of it. With the right. Well, actually, last week we played their Mitch's version of his epic 40K using the command and colors type system, and it was all right. I mean, it was a little visually distracting because they were on big hexes, and the edges of the hexes meant something, so they're all different type of colors, and it was all right. It was all right as a game. It didn't make me want to read any 40K lore. Not that it's 40K precisely, but it's, you got orcs and space marines and Imperial Guard and all those little vehicles and stuff like that. Well, did you finally decide whether or not you were moving out? I know you were talking at one time you were going to move somewhere else. I know one guy that we do work with, a customer, was saying he was moving out of Florida. He was tired of all the nonsense. He was moving to Tennessee. You ever think the people in Tennessee maybe don't want you to move there? I actually like Tennessee. A little too far away from salt water. What I've seen of Texas, I really didn't mind Texas. The parts that I saw. Still has the best state flag. Nobody's got Texas beat on the state flag. Not that that's a huge reason to live somewhere, but there's some state flags that suck. 40 Warhammer 40 lore I couldn't get into. 40K and the other one, yeah. You couldn't get into the fantasy. I honestly don't know what it is. But I had the original 40K book, the one that you'd get the book, the pages would just fall out. I don't know if they got better, but the one I got like in 1988 or 87, 88 or 89 was certainly that way. It just all fall apart. I don't know if they just had a bad printer or something like that. It's almost like the stuff holding the pages together like dry rotted, and just like you turn the page and the whole page would come out. Beautiful page, you know. Job searching right now, open to moving out or just lesser populated area, applying for a job in New Hampshire currently. Gun toting hippies. That's New Hampshire. I've never been up there, but it's probably, it's probably all right, you know. One of them snowed in states, though. Yeah, we got a lot of people here in Florida. A little too many. I don't live in a very heavily populated area, but it's kind of annoying when things are like are so much trouble to do than they used to be. If I move to a different state, I don't want to move somewhere as a state income tax. Well, you got like five to choose from. I don't remember them right off the bat. I think we're one of them. South Dakota, just does New Hampshire have a? No, I guess New Hampshire doesn't have a state income tax. If you didn't thought 40K starting 87, my book's falling apart as well. 8 states, yeah, maybe it's more than five. Is Tennessee one of them? I think Tennessee might be one of them. Yeah, no point paying more taxes. I don't use the stuff that it pays for right now, anyways. So, well, I don't want to give them more money for less stuff I use. What are some decent cities to live in? Well, there's a thing that they have in Florida that they don't have in a lot of places. Well, actually, they do have in a lot of places. That's hurricanes. So if that's a big concern of you, you're kind of limited on where you want to live. I mean, like where I live is great. Like I'm not running my mouth and then a hurricane comes here. I'm just saying, in living here since '81, like it's not even an issue. Fortunately, as long as you keep trees away from you. But the central corridor, the problem is there's some parts of Florida that are like you don't want to live in because they got too many people in them. I don't want to live in them either. Or there's too much crime. The problem is too many people and too much crime go together. And there's some places that are just like, man, did the South win the war? And nobody, like I drove through some places like Inverness and stuff. Some places in Citrus County that were just like, holy redneck Batman. I don't mind country people, but, I don't want to live somewhere it's backwards, you know. Because like I like to say, I am from the South, and I'm proud to be from the South, but I'm not Southern. And I don't want to be Southern. Um, just like, there's a lot of things I probably would like about Texas, but I don't want to be one of them 10-gallon hat wearing boot jokers, That's not my thing, you know. So, I don't want to, I don't, I used to live in a town that now, when all those students are in, there's 150,000 people. 140,000, 130, 150,000 people. Sounds like a lot. It's not bad. There just isn't a lot of opportunity there for a job. And if you do find one, it doesn't pay well. But standard of living's good. Used to be good. Housing in Florida has gotten ridiculous in the last Well, since COVID, it just got stupid. But the pay scale around here is pretty low. It just depends how rural you want to go. I mean, there's lots of rural stuff in Florida, but if you stick to the center area, the Panhandle used to be pretty good for like storms, but it seems like all the storms always go out there. And they have like a road net issue. I call it a road net issue because there's like only one way in, one way out. Like Panama City, I've never been to Panama City because it's a nightmare to get there. It's like 6 hours to get there, and it's not that far by the way the crow flies, but there just isn't a good way to get there. I'm like equidistant between Jacksonville, Tampa, and Orlando. I'm equidistant to that. The only bad thing about living out here is I-75. It's just a nightmare all of the time, constantly, and I think it has to do with so many people living in the state and so many people having their phone up their phone up their ass, not paying attention while they're driving. You know, so the big cities. Some areas like the Tampa Bay area is I wouldn't want to live in Tampa, but the areas around it are really nice, but they've just gotten really expensive to live in. And you could have hurricane issues. You could live, that whole Wesley Chapel area has really exploded around Tampa. And it's my kind of, I'm a suburbia kind of person. I want a place that, that's low crime and suburbia. But a lot of these places are just, they're in a place where they can get just decimated by hurricanes. Insurance is just a screwing right here. Insurance doesn't pay for anything anymore. They can get away with, all kinds of stuff. But where we're at, I'm close to the city I grew up in, so it's not bad. But you start getting somewhere like really, really rural, and you're talking about, not being able to get groceries at a civilized grocery store. I'm like, I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in going in like having to go to a real rustic type place to get your groceries, or driving 20 miles to get them and things like that. Isn't Florida still the state retirees go? Well, they say a lot of them are moving out. The problem is they get tired with all those state income taxes, and they come here and they want to vote for things that are just going to cause us problems in the future. And I'm not saying I want to live in a place full of rednecks. I don't, but I don't want free shit. I want government out of my life, not free shit. So, all right. So this is where we're going to leave this at, with the outcropping and everything. We'll see how this turns out. I think, like I said, if it doesn't turn out well, we'll just snap that bastard off and just pave it straight. But now we got up to level 4 on some of these things. We'll let this dry. We're going to prime this with a one-shot primer, and then do the base